The wind rolled down from the mountains. Like a slow, sorrowful song, snow clung to the edges of the pine trees, blanketing the world in silence. Inside a modest wooden cabin, a wheelchair sat. Near the window, unmoving, just like the girl who occupied it. Ava Walker was 12 years old, and her world had grown quiet. Since the day her father, Marine Corps Sergeant Ethan Walker, didn't come home. He had died overseas, serving his country, saving lives. What he left behind was a wife, a daughter, and a silence that settled deep. Ava was born paralyzed from the waist down, but she hadn't always been like this, still, silent, detached. It began after the funeral, after the flags, after the last echo of taps faded from the hills. Her mother, Emily, tried everything, but some walls can't be reached by words. And this winter, those walls felt colder than ever. The cabin had grown quiet in ways that couldn't be explained. No piano, notes, no humming, no gentle clatter of pencils on paper. Ava had once been a girl full of light, quick to laugh, eager to draw, her wheelchair never slowing her spirit. But after her father's death, that spark flickered. Now days bled into nights with little change. Ava would sit by the window for hours, staring at the same frozen trees her father once pointed to, telling stories of bravery and honor. She didn't speak much, not to her mother, not to anyone. Even when her mother read to her aloud or played the old music box Ethan had brought from overseas, Ava's eyes remained distant. Emily also took Ava to see therapists. Art therapy, child SPA counseling, even mindfulness sessions designed for kids. She tried alternative communication, boards, music therapy, soft space groups. But Ava would just sit there, silent, her gaze drifting far beyond the room. No reaction, no refusal, just a quiet absence, as if none of it could reach the place where she had gone to hide. Each morning, Emily wheeled her daughter to the kitchen, fixed oatmeal, and hoped. And each evening, she tucked her in beneath the same quilt Ethan used to carry on cold deployments, whispering promises into the dark. "It's okay, baby. You're not alone." But Ava felt alone, the kind of alone that goes deeper than face. Her silence wasn't just grief, was armor. Outside, the world moved on. Seasons changed. People sent cards, called less and less. Inside the cabin, time had stalled. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath, waiting, hoping that something, anything, would break through. The snow was falling sideways that night. Thick, heavy flakes carried by mountain wind. The windows of the cabin rattled. Emily stirred the fire, wrapping another blanket around Ava's legs. Outside, the world was dark and ruthless. Inside, it was quiet. Quiet. Then came the knock. Not a knock. Exactly, more like a thud. A single sound against the wooden porch, then another, and then the scratch of claws against timber. Emily froze. Eva's head turned slightly toward the door, her eyes narrowing. It wasn't wind. Not this time. Emily opened the door just a crack. The cold burst in instantly, sharp as broken glass. But standing there, silent, still, and covered in snow, was a German shepherd. The dog didn't bark, didn't whimper, just stood there, its eyes fixed on Ava as if the world around them no longer mattered. Ava stared back. There was something in that gaze, something that stirred a forgotten hope inside her. Ava didn't know why the dog had come, but deep down she felt it might have brought something from her father, a memory, a scent, a piece of his soul, and she smiled because for the first time in so long it felt like her dad had never really left. The silence between them was strange, not the kind Ava was used to, heavy and hollow. This silence was different, full, alive, familiar, as if something buried long ago had risen from the snow and walked across the porch. And then, quietly, Ava whispered, "Brun." The dog took one slow step forward, its tail stayed low, ears slightly back, and then, without a sound, it lowered its head and gently pressed its forehead to Ava's knee. Emily gasped. Ava didn't move. Her hand trembled, reaching out, fingertips brushing the fur that was cold and soaked and very, very real. For the first time in nearly a year, Ava smiled. Emily brought the dog inside, unsure of what to do. His coat was soaked, his paws cracked from the cold, but he didn't seem to care. His eyes never left Ava. The cabin, for a brief moment, felt like it used to, like when Ethan would come home from a long deployment, and the house would somehow feel warmer, fuller, more alive. Ava didn't say much that night. She just sat by the fire, her hand resting on Bruno's back, but there was a softness to her face that Emily hadn't seen in nearly a year. Later, Emily found an old photo tucked into one of Ethan's journals. Ethan in uniform, crouched beside the same dog, younger than, but unmistakably Bruno. The writing on the back said simply, K9. Bruno. The best damn partner I've ever had. Her heart caught. This wasn't a stray. This was family. Ava knew it. Ooh. In the days that followed, she moved more, spoke a little, asked where Bruno would sleep. She even insisted on giving him her favorite blanket. There was a calm between them, like they spoke in silences others couldn't understand. And Bruno, he seemed to know the house, the smells, the corners where Ethan used to sit. He'd pause beside Ethan's old chair and lie down like he was still guarding something sacred. It didn't matter how far he had come or how long it had taken. Bruno had returned, and in doing so, he had brought back a part of Ethan no one thought could be reached again. The change didn't come all at once. It came slowly in pieces, like sunlight pushing its way through morning fog. It began on a Wednesday morning. Emily was in the kitchen when she heard a strange shuffle. Soft, deliberate. He walked to the hallway and froze. Bruno was in Ava's room, standing by her bed, tail wagging gently. He nudged her arm again and again, then rested his head on her stomach. Ava, who had refused to get up for weeks, let out a breath and moved her hand to his head. Not much, but enough. By Friday, she was getting out of bed before Emily called her. Bruno had started sleeping at the foot of her bed, rising with the same discipline he must have learned from Ethan. And when Ava didn't move fast enough in the morning, he'd grab her slipper or bump her chair, staring with firm eyes that made it clear sleep time was over. Became their routine. Bruno waited by the bathroom. He followed her to the table, sitting on the floor like a quiet shadow. He didn't demand anything. He was just there. One afternoon, Emily returned from running errands to find Ava on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket with Bruno curled beside her. The sketchbook rested on her lap, open to a new drawing. A field of mountains, a little girl in a wheelchair, and, beside her, a dog with kind eyes. That evening, Ava asked if they could start homeschooling again. A week later, she rolled into the kitchen wearing one of Ethan's old t-shirts. He liked the ocean, she said, pointing to the print. He used to say salt air made people stronger. Emily could barely respond. Through her tears, Bruno didn't speak. He didn't perform miracles. But by simply showing up every day, every hour, he helped Ava find her way back to the world. It was a Thursday morning, cool and clear, with early spring sun filtering through the pine trees. Ava and Emily had started taking short walks. Again, Bruno always by Ava's side, his step steady and sure, just slightly behind her left wheel. That day they made it farther than usual, following the winding path of a quiet trail behind the local park. Ava was in good spirits, laughing at something her mom said, Bruno trotting happily beside her. Then, without warning, her laughter cut short. Ava's body stiffened. Her eyes went wide, then unfocused. Her arms trembled, and she slumped forward in her chair. Ava! Emily's voice cracked, panic already rising. Ava! Bruno reacted first. Before Emily could even pull out her phone, Bruno took off down the trail, ears back, moving fast despite the stiffness in his joints. He reached the park's main road in seconds, ran straight into the street, and blocked the path of an oncoming car. The driver slammed on the brakes. Bruno jumped up, paused, tapping frantically on the window. At first, the woman inside was startled, but then she saw the tag on his vest. Service dog, special response. He barked once, turned, and sprinted back the way he came. She followed. They reached Ava within minutes. Emily was shaking, trying to keep her daughter upright. The woman called emergency services as Bruno circled back, panting, eyes wild but focused. The paramedics arrived just in time. Ava had suffered a seizure, unexpected and severe. The doctor would later say that had it been 5 minutes later, the outcome could have been very different, but it wasn't. Because Bruno had run, because Bruno had remembered what it meant to protect. Recovery was slow. Ava spent 3 nights in the hospital. Monitors beeped softly through each hour, and Emily never left her side. Bruno, too, refused to leave the hospital entrance. He lay curled beneath the waiting room bench, eyes fixed on the double doors of the ICU. When Ava was finally discharged, her face was pale, her body weaker than before. But the moment Bruno saw her, something shifted. He stood up slowly, his tail thumping once against the tile. Ava reached for him without a word, her hand sinking into his fur like it was home. The days that followed were fragile but meaningful. Bruno never left her side. He lay beside her while she rested, paced at the door during physical therapy sessions, and even followed her into the kitchen, nudging her gently when she seemed too tired to move. Something had changed in Ava, too. She began writing, not just journaling, but telling stories about the mountains, about Ethan, and about a dog who could hear sadness and silence. Emily found scraps of paper all over the house, some with doodles, some with beginnings of poems. For the first time, Ava seemed to want to make sense of her feelings, not hide from them. At night, Bruno would rest with his head on Ava's footrest, eyes half closed, but always watchful. It wasn't just routine anymore. It was purpose. And Ava, once so withdrawn, began to talk to other kids. Online, especially those with disabilities. She told them about Bruno, about bravery, about how healing doesn't always mean walking again. Sometimes it means remembering who you are, even when everything around you has changed. And for the first time since her father's death, Ava didn't feel broken. She felt whole. The invitation came in a white envelope with blue letters. Invited. Heroes in our community. The city was hosting a public event to honor veterans, first responders, and service animals. Emily wasn't sure if Ava would want to go, but when she handed her the envelope, the girl didn't flinch. "Can I talk about Dad?" Ava asked. Emily nodded, her throat tightening. The event took place in the town hall auditorium, packed with families, city officials, and community members. Ava waited behind the curtain, Bruno beside her, tail calm, eyes scanning the room. When her name was called, Ava wheeled herself onto the stage. The crowd hushed. Instantly, Bruno walked beside her, proud and steady, wearing a vest with Ethan's Marine Corps patch sewn onto it. At the microphone, she looked at the crowd, then at Bruno. He looked back, calm, present as always. "I used to think bravery meant going to war," she began, voice soft but steady. "My dad did that. He gave his life for people he never knew for a long time after. I didn't know how to keep going." He touched Bruno's head. "But someone came back," she said. "He didn't speak. He didn't promise. He just stayed. He reminded me that healing doesn't mean forgetting, and strength isn't always loud." The applause came, gently at first, then all at once. Ava didn't shrink. She sat taller, looking out over the audience, not as someone in a chair but as someone who had found her voice. Bruno sat at her side, still and proud, as if he knew exactly what those words had meant. After the ceremony, life felt brighter than it had in years. Ava was smiling more, talking more, planning again. But just when things seemed almost whole, Bruno began to slow down. Not in spirit, he was still alert, still beside Ava's wheelchair every morning. But in body, his movements were more careful, his breath sometimes short. Ava noticed, but didn't say anything at first. Maybe it was just age, she hoped. Then came the morning. He didn't get up at all. Ava and Emily took him to the vet. The diagnosis came quietly, wrapped in clinical words and the heavy silence that followed. A large abdominal tumor, dangerously close to vital organs. Surgery was possible, but the chances of recovery were low. His age, the tumors, location, it all worked against him. "I don't care," Ava said firmly. "He gave me my life back. I'm not giving up on his." Emily sold an old family heirloom to cover the cost. Ava spent the night before the surgery curled beside Bruno, on the floor, her fingers in his fur, whispering the same bedtime stories he used to listen to by her feet. The day of the operation was long. Ava waited in the clinic side room, refusing to leave. She clutched the blanket Bruno loved most, and every now and then she closed her eyes and whispered, "You're strong. You've always been strong." Hours passed. When the vet came out, her smile was tired but real. "He made it," she said. "It was close, but he made it. Bruno's recovery was slow but steady. He moved gingerly, his steps shorter, his breathing more shallow. But he wagged his tail when Ava entered the room, and he still tried to follow her even when his legs trembled. And now the roles had reversed. Ava sat beside him for hours, reading to him from her notebook. Wrote poems just for him, told him about the kids she was helping online, and recited her favorite memories of Ethan. Sometimes she would cry. Sometimes Bruno would nuzzle her hand like he understood every word. He stayed for me, Ava once told her mom. Now it's my turn. And she did. Through every ache, every shaky step, Ava was there. Bruno had once saved her soul. Now she was healing his. Spring melted into summer and life slowly settled into something soft, something steady. Bruno moved slower. His steps were shorter and sometimes he had to rest halfway through their walks, but his eyes still lit up. Every morning when Ava wheeled into the room, he still waited by the door. Phil followed her around the cabin like it was his life's mission. And Ava, she was different too. Not just stronger, but present, alive. She had plans now to write a book, to mentor other kids with disabilities, to speak in support groups, about finding hope after loss. Wanted to be the person she once needed, the one who says, "You're not alone. Keep going." But more than that, she had a quiet appreciation for each day, each sunrise, each breath. She had learned that healing wasn't a finish line, was a choice, one you make over and over again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. One evening, she and Bruno sat on the back porch, watching the sky turn orange. Ava leaned down, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "You saved me more than once." Bruno didn't move. He just leaned gently into her side as if to say, "You did the same." They didn't need big endings, no grand fanfare, just this. Two souls who had nearly given up, choosing every day to stay, to keep breathing, to keep loving. Ava had once thought life was something that happened to her. Now she knew better. Life is what you protect, what you fight for, what you choose to cherish, even when it hurts. Their story wasn't about overcoming everything. Was about showing up for each other every day, no matter